Yes.
Okay, we'll see. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukhaṁ Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langhayate Girim Yatkrapatamahang Bande Shri Gurun Dinataranam Shri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Pancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhobhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Welcome back, all. So we'll continue today in our glimpses at Sharanagati. This is one of the 64 more prominent angas of bhakti that Srila Rupa Goswami discusses in the second chapter of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And as we know, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has written about it in a number of places. He discusses it in Jaiva Dharma, and he's written a book of songs exploring Sharanagati. And as we'll see, it's also discussed in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita in an important chapter there. And today we'll talk about Rakshishati Vishvasaha, confidence in the Lord's protection. Okay, the slideshow seems not to be working. I don't know why. There we go. So once again, we have our 6 angas of Sharanagati, 6 aspects of seeking shelter at the Lord's lotus feet. Anukulyasya sankalpaha, pratikulyasya varjanam, rakshashatiti vishvaso, goptrate varanam tata, atmanikshepa karpanye shadvidha sharanagati. So we have six kinds of surrendering to Krishna. Anukulyasya sankalpaha, the determination to accept whatever is favorable for the culture of bhakti. Pratikulyasya varjanam, and along with that, a determination to reject things that work against the culture of bhakti, that undermine that. Rakshashatiti Vishvaso, today's topic, being very completely confident that the Lord will protect us in all situations. Goptratve varanang tata. Accepting Krishna as our exclusive maintainer. Atmani kshepa, complete self-surrender, or as Srila Prabhupada often puts it, giving up all personal interest for the interest of the Lord, and karpanye, or humility. So this part of my task this last week was figuring out what we would not discuss as examples of taking shelter of Krishna, because we see so many throughout the Bhagavatam and the other scriptures as well. As we'll see, as we can see here, we have an example of taking shelter of Krishna in the Mahabharata. We have it in the Ramayana. We'll see a verse from the Ramayana later this morning. And we see it throughout the Bhagavatam. So I just chose a few examples to take a quick look at and discuss. And so the first is from the Mahabharata, and this is Draupadi as she's being assaulted by Dushasana in the Sabha, in the assembly hall, in front of everybody. Everyone's there. The Pandavas, the Kauravas, and all kinds of kings and courtiers, and Duryodhana and Shakuni have decided to prey on one weakness that the saintly King Yudhishthir has, and that is his inability to decline a challenge, even in the form of gambling. And he's not a very good gambler. And on top of that, Shakuni, who's playing on behalf of Duryodhana and his brothers, is a very expert cheater. So he's managed to get everything, to win everything from Yudhishthir, including his own self. First, well, including his kingdom, all his wealth, then his entourage, then his brothers, and then his very self. And so then they want one more bet. And this is something that Duryodhana and Dushasana especially really wants, and that is Draupadi. So Yudhishthir goes for it and loses, as we know. And Dushasana goes into Draupadi's private quarters, and this is a time of the month when ladies like to kind of keep to themselves. And so she wasn't properly dressed. She was just hanging out in her own private quarters. Her hair was down. Her hair hadn't been put up. And Dushasana went into her quarters, grabbed her by the hair, and dragged her into the assembly. I mean, it's hard to even think of, much less say out loud, and tried to disrobe her. And Draupadi, warrior princess, born, she's like revenge personified in a sense. Very, I was going to say very fiery personality, because in fact she was born from a sacrificial fire. So she didn't take this lightly. She was enraged. She was furious. And she's looking around at all the kings and warriors assembled, including her husbands and grandfather Bhishma, the personification of uprightness. And she's saying, well, this is, you're all just sitting on your hands and you're not doing anything. And Dushasana tries to disrobe her, and naturally she tries to protect herself by holding onto her clothes. But Dushasana is this like monstrous warrior guy. So he's pulling off her cloth, even though she's trying to resist, and she's not able to resist him. And at a certain point, she just gives up, and she throws up her arms and just gives herself into Krishna's care, completely takes shelter of Krishna. And this is her prayer. Pratigyatava Govinda name bhakta pranashyati iti sangsmritya pranang sangdharayamyam. O Govinda, remembering again and again your promise that your devotee will never perish, I maintain my life. So she's able to live, she says, only by remembering Krishna's repeated promise that he will always protect his devotee. He says this throughout the Mahabharata. We see it in the Ramayana, as I said, and we see it in the Bhagavad Gita. We'll take a look at that as well. And Krishna recounting this, and this is actually cited This is cited in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, in the second chapter of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which is the chapter on sadhana bhakti. And this verse is given as an example of one of, no, actually, it's not in the chapter on sadhana bhakti. It's in another section of the Bhagavatam. I don't know why I have it. I have it here as 189, but actually, I think it's listed in a different part of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which describes the 64 qualities that make Krishna the perfect object of love. And this is gratitude. This is listed under gratitude. I don't know why I have that citation. I'll have to check later and see if I can remember why I did that. So remembering this, Krishna himself says elsewhere in the Mahabharata, Vriname tat pravriddhang me hridayan na pasarpati yad govinde ti chukro sha Krishna mam dura vasinam. Draupadi cried out, "Oh Govinda, even though I was situated far away, that crying has created an ever increasing debt which does not leave my heart." Oh, I'm sorry. So the first one, the Pratigyatava Govinda, is cited in the second chapter. This is cited in the second ocean. So I can't remember how it goes. Northern Ocean. And this is in the chapter, the first chapter, Qualities of Krishna, the 64 qualities that make Krishna the perfect object of love. So this is Krishna expressing his gratitude. Because of his gratitude to Krishna, a name of Draupadi, she was called Krishna because she was also darkish like Krishna. And many of us may be aware that her relationship with Krishna was one of Sakyarati, friendship. And so she wasn't one of the cowherd boys, of course. She was a Pura Sambandhi. She was one of his city friends. And they had a very close relationship. She and Krishna had a very close relationship, which is exploited actually in a couple of novels, two novels that I know of, which tell the story of the Mahabharata from Draupadi's perspective. One is one that was written in the 70s by an Orison woman named Pratibha Roy, called Jagyaseni, and the other is Chitra Divkaruni Banerjee's Palace of Illusions. And at the end of the Palace of Illusions, as Draupadi is giving up her life's heir, what we see there is that the one enduring the closest of all the relationships Draupadi had with anybody was with Krishna. And it's quite moving. I've had a hard time even referring to it, much less reading it without losing my composure. So Krishna here is expressing his gratitude, which endears him to the devotees. He feels indebted to his devotees for anything that they do. We were discussing this last night in a Nectar of Devotion class. I don't, somehow or other this came up. And, one of the devotees was asking, how is it that Krishna feels indebted to the devotees? And it's because he's very soft-hearted. Okay. So another place where we see, and as we know, to go back to this, we know the result, that when Draupadi was able to actually let Krishna take care of it, as the 12-step folks might say, let go and let God, then Krishna, even though he was very far away, was able to supply unlimited cloth, and completely frustrated Dushasana's efforts to embarrass Draupadi any more than he already had. And of course, those of us who've read the Mahabharata know Draupadi's response. She was so infuriated afterward that she swore she would not put her hair up until she had washed it in Dushasana's blood. And this is the original warrior princess. So this is Krishna protecting someone in physical danger. Krishna protects us also in spirit when we're in spiritual danger. He protects our bhakti. So we see this toward the end of the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. The devotees are pretty familiar with these verses. Krishna says to Arjuna, this is an interesting chapter for something like for a point like this to come up, because this is the most confidential of all knowledge, and this is Krishna building up to the most secret of all secrets, which, as we know, is there in the last verse of the 9th chapter, and again right in the middle of the Bhagavad Gita, and then again at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, right at the end of the 18th chapter. Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. So here Krishna says, just before that, Krishna says, apichet suduracharo bhajate mam ananya bhak sadhureva samantavya samyag vyavasito hisaha. Even if one commits the most abominable actions, if he's engaged in devotional service, he is to be considered saintly because he is properly situated. And this translation, I believe, was from Srila Prabhupada's 1972 edition of Bhagavad Gita as it is. But as we know, when Krishna says if he's engaged in devotional service, what he's talking about here is ananya bhakti, which is devotion given exclusively to Krishna without any regard for the devatas or any goal other than loving Krishna. And then he explains how this is so. Kshipram bhavati dharmatma sasvachantim nigacchati kaunteya pratijanihi name bhakta pranashyati. He quickly becomes righteous and attains lasting peace. So because he's rightly situated, he's actually engaged as the jiva should be engaged in serving Krishna exclusively. So this is one of the hallmarks of a surrendered soul. So then he says, Kaunteya pratijanihi name bhakta pranashyati. Declare it boldly that my devotee never perishes. And we've discussed this so many times in the association of devotees. Krishna is asking Arjuna to declare it because Krishna doesn't have such a good reputation when it comes to straightforward dealings. He can be a little crooked. At residents of Mathura, Guru Maharaj points out in his Bhagavad Gita that the residents of Mathura have a reputation for bending the truth, we might say. So Krishna is saying, but if you say it, because everybody accepts you as righteous, if you say it, people will take it clearly that my devotee is never he is never overcome. And what he's talking about here is protecting our bhakti, and that is the ultimate protection, because we know that anybody who has a material body is subjected to birth, old age, disease, and death. So, we might object. What do you mean? How are you protecting? I know a devotee who died of cancer last week. I know another devotee who died of the COVID virus last month, and another devotee who was in a car accident. Another devotee, one of whose children became the victim of addiction. So what do you mean? Krishna protects us in all circumstances, and ultimately it means he protects our bhakti. I don't know how to. Okay, this whole being on camera business is a little annoying to me. So this is Krishna himself asserting very strongly, in no uncertain terms, that his devotees never going to be defeated. We see another example in King Parikshit. And we know King Parikshit's story. He had actually already been protected by Krishna while he was still in utero, while he was still in his mother's womb. Uttara was attacked by Ashvatthama with a Brahmastra weapon, and Krishna personally protected, because he wanted to kill King Parikshit. He wanted to kill the next in line. And so Krishna personally protected King Parikshit. And Parikshit saw the Lord while he was still in the womb, and he had spent the rest of his life looking for Krishna. And he certainly found him at the end of life. So one day he was out hunting, as Kshatriyas do, and being overcome by quite uncharacteristically, in fact, overcome by fatigue and thirst. On seeing a sage's ashram, he approached the sage to ask for some water. Now, the sage was in trance, meditating on the Lord, and King Parikshit, even more uncharacteristically, responded to the sage's ignoring him by insulting him, and that resulted in the sage's inexperienced son cursing King Parikshit to die in 7 days by the bite of a snake bird. So we see this at the end of the first canto, as we're being set up for hearing Shukadev Goswami begin his narration of, well, his answers actually to King Parikshit's questions, which basically boil down to one: what is our prime duty as human beings? Or as my friend Kusha likes to put it, what is the duty of one who is about to die? Because this is Parikshit's situation. As soon as he heard about the curse, rather than becoming upset and trying to resist it, or going to some Brahmin, or going back to the sage and appealing, because after all, it was the rash response of an inexperienced boy, he accepted it as his opportunity to become free from the responsibilities of managing the kingdom and family life. And he walked away from all of it, just as with the same kind of joy with which a yogi gives up his life heirs or something like that. So this is his statement of surrender to his situation. He says, Tung mo payatam pratiyantu vipra ganga chadevi drutachitamishe dvijo pashashta kuhakastakshakova dashatvalam gayata vishnugataha. Oh, Brahmana, just accept me as a completely surrendered soul, and let Mother Ganges, the representative of the Lord, also accept me in this way, for I have already taken the lotus feet of the Lord into my heart. Let the snake bird or whatever magical thing the Brahmana created bite me at once. I only desire that you continue singing the deeds of Lord Vishnu. So this is, he had no concern for his personal physical safety. He felt convinced that his only business was hearing about the Lord. And so we see the King Parikshit is the exemplar among the 9 angas of bhakti given by Prahlad Maharaj. King Parikshit is the exemplar of hearing about Krishna. Srila Prabhupada, I'm taking something from Srila Prabhupada's purport here. As soon as one is given up completely unto the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, he's not at all afraid of death. The atmosphere created by the presence of great devotees of the Lord on the bank of the Ganges and Maharaj Parikshit's complete acceptance of the Lord's lotus feet were a sufficient guarantee to the king for going back to Godhead. He thus became absolutely free from all fear of death. So this is another example of, in the direst of situations, his death has been announced. He has, he's got the date, and he knows that it's coming. He accepts it as inevitable, and responds accordingly as a surrendered soul. He says, I've already taken the lotus feet of the Lord into my heart. He did that even before birth. Even as a boy, he played, he engaged in deity worship and played with Krishna dolls and things like that. His whole life has been all about serving Krishna and remembering Krishna and seeking out Krishna. And so he's, when he was cursed to die in 7 days, he took it as a great opportunity. Like, cool. Okay, now I can do this. Now I can be completely surrendered. I don't have to worry about everything. Left the kingdom in the charge of his son, and walked away with nothing, without anything. Sat down on the bank of the Ganges, or according to some acharyas, the Jamuna, and then Shukadev Goswami, as we know, appeared, and then all the sages and great personalities from all over the universe, when they realized that something really momentous was just about to happen, they all gathered there to hear King Parikshit's questions and Shukadev Goswami's answers. And that all becomes to our benefit. And then there's another place in the Bhagavatam where we see this Krishna, how eager Krishna is to protect someone. And this is an instance where he protects a sworn enemy. So this is Putana. So the setting for the verse is that Vidura took the opportunity of being insulted by his nephew Duryodhana to leave the palace that the Kauravas were running and go on pilgrimage. He didn't really have any need to do that, but he saw that this was just not a good situation, and he just took it as an excuse to go on pilgrimage. So the first person that we hear he encountered as he's on pilgrimage, and we know that the purpose of going on pilgrimage is actually to hear from the saintly persons who live at the different tirthas. Those tirthas actually become purified by the presence of those devotees. So he finds Uddhava, and so he sits down in front of Uddhava, and he begins asking Uddhava about Krishna in a sort of circuitous way. He starts asking about Krishna's different associates in Dwarka. He needs different friends and family members, and then eventually he gets to asking directly about Krishna. And at that point, Uddhava goes into trance. And it's a really interesting verse. The word that's used in the verse is muhurta. He went into trance for a muhurta. Now, in his translation and in his purport, Srila Prabhupada gives that as for a moment. But Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur makes it really clear. A muhurta has a definite duration. A muhurta is 48 minutes. So Uddhava went into just thinking about Krishna. Just the chapter in which we find this is Srila Prabhupada is called Remembrance of Lord Krishna. And so this is Uddhava remembering Krishna as he's coming out of his trance. He's stunned for 48 minutes, for more than 3/4 of an hour. And you can imagine what an interesting situation that must have been for Vidura, that all of a sudden Uddhava is completely motionless, hardly even breathing. And so he just has to wait. And he comes out and he starts remembering all these things about Krishna and his pastimes. And so this is one of the verses. This is a very famous verse among the devotees. He says, Aho bhakiyam stanakalakutam jigangsha yadapya sadvi lebhe gatim dhatruchitam tatonyam kangva dayalum sharanam brajema. He says, how could I take shelter of anyone more merciful than Krishna, who granted the position of a mother to a she-demon, although she was unfaithful? Srila Prabhupada, such a gentle translation of sadvi, unfaithful. She was not a gentle lady. In fact, she was a nasty demoniac witch who had one purpose and one purpose only, and that was to kill Krishna on Kamsa's behalf. And she prepared deadly poison to be sucked from her breast. And we know, well, let me read Prabhupada's, an excerpt from Srila Prabhupada's, well, actually, I think this is Prabhupada's entire purport and an excerpt from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's Tika. Prabhupada says, here's an example of the extreme mercy of the Lord, even to his enemy. It is said that a noble man accepts the good qualities of a person of doubtful character, just as one accepts nectar from a stalk of poison. In his babyhood, he was administered deadly poison by Putana, a she-demon who tried to kill the wonderful baby. And because she was a demon, it was impossible for her to know that the Supreme Lord, even though playing the part of a baby, was no one less than the same Supreme Personality of Godhead. His value as the Supreme Lord did not diminish upon his becoming a baby to please his mother, to please his devotee Yashoda. The Lord may assume the form of a baby or a shape other than that of a human being, but it doesn't make the slightest difference. He is always the same Supreme. A living creature, however powerful he may become by dint of severe penance, can never become equal to the Supreme Lord. Lord Krishna accepted the motherhood of Krishna because she pretended to be an affectionate mother, allowing Krishna to suck her breast. The Lord accepts the least qualification of the living entity and awards him the highest reward. This is the standard of his character. Therefore, who but the Lord can be the ultimate shelter? And this is the big point here, that Krishna is the ultimate shelter. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, remembering Krishna's sweet mercy to those who wanted to harm him when he first appeared in the world, Uddhava laments. Even though Putana, who pretended to have the sentiments of a mother, gave him poison to kill him, she attained a position in Goloka similar to the nurses of Krishna. Krishna has two real nurses named Ambika and Kalimba. Though Putana only had the dress of a devotee, she attained love suitable to a devotee. Though she hated the Lord, he made her a special example. This incident shows Krishna's quality of giving liberation and bhakti to even those who hate him. So as Uddhava says, who could be a better shelter than Krishna? Because just because Putana dressed up like a devotee, pretended to be a devotee, Krishna accepted that. We see in Chaitanya Bhagavat that he's referred to as Bhavagrahi Janardana, that he accepts the sentiment. And here he's not accepting the sentiment. He's accepting the pretense as if it were the sentiment. Who could be more merciful? Who could be a better shelter than Krishna, who will give bhakti even to his avowed enemies? So um, uh, that's a really nice verse. And we know this verse has a history as well. We know from, I think, one of the Puranas that when Shukadev finally agreed to take birth, he immediately left home without accepting any reformatory processes or even bothering to dress. He left home. He saw, Krishna had assured him, it's okay to come out. You won't be affected by Maya. But he looked around and he saw a household situation and thought, oh man, this is dangerous, and went straight to the forest and sat down in his uh, Brahman realization to meditate on his identity with the Absolute. And of course, Vyasadeva and his wife were quite distressed that after having waited so long for their son to be born, he immediately splits. So Vyasadeva asked some of his disciples to dress up as woodcutters and to go out into the forest and chant certain Bhagavatam verses. And this is one of the verses that when Shukadev Goswami heard it, realized, oh, wait, this Brahmananda is not such a hot thing after all. It sounds like there's something that's infinitely better. So he went back home to receive continued instruction from Vyasadeva in Bhakti. And then another place where this comes up, we see this in Chaitanya Leela. I believe this is in Chaitanya Bhagavat, where even though he wasn't completely unknown to Gadadhar Pandit, apparently Gadadhar didn't really have a deep appreciation for Pundarik Vidyanidhi, and his friend Mukunda Dutt suggested to him that he says, there's this really, really cool Vaishnava that you've got to meet. You will love this fellow. He's absolutely amazing. His bhakti is so deep. So, of course, Gadadhar agreed to go. And then Pundarik Vidyanidhi, wearing all the nicest clothes, dressed to the nines, he's carried in on a palanquin, and he sits on all kinds of soft cushions, and he's smoking a hookah. And Gadadhar Pandit's sitting there thinking, wait, this guy's a Vaishnava? What's that? I don't, doesn't add up. And seeing seeing the expression on Gadadhar Pandit's face, Mukunda Dutt is able to discern his heart, his mind. And so he just calls out this verse, Ho Bhakiyam Stana Kalakutam. And immediately Pundarik goes into trance, falls off his fancy couch, and is completely stunned. And Gadadhar Pandit gets it. He says, oh, he just hears a line from the Bhagavatam glorifying Krishna, and he goes into trance. This is my kind of Vaishnava after all. And then he surrenders in order to atone for thinking something untoward about Pundarik Vidyanidhi. He surrenders to him and takes Vaishnava Diksha from him, which is completely appropriate because we know Pundarik Vidyanidhi is in Krishna Leela. He is Radharani's father, Vrishabhanu, and that Gadadhar Pandit is an expression of Srimati Radharani in Gaura Lila. This is a verse from the Skanda Purana that I think expresses really nicely the solid nature, I guess, of Krishna as shelter. For those who have stumbled and fallen upon the ground, that very ground is the only support by which they can arise again. Likewise, for those who have offended you, O Lord, you alone are their only refuge. I just think this is wonderful. Sometimes devotees talk about how fallen they are, but if we're fallen, then that's our opportunity. Once we realize we're fallen, that's our opportunity to get up. Because we're on the ground, it's the ground that helps us get back up. So our acknowledging our fallen situation, which is temporary, is a good opportunity for us. And so even for those who have offended the Lord, he is their only refuge. I don't remember what the context is for this, or even I may have taken this from Prapanna Jivanamritam, so I don't remember the context for it, but I've always thought this just a really cool verse. We hear in the Bhagavatam, we hear in the first canto, Narada Muni tells Vyasadeva that bhakti is the only safe situation. If you want any success in karma or jnana or yoga, you have to do them perfectly. But bhakti, you can even completely mess up and go off the rails, and still nothing's lost. Because we become, as Narada Muni puts it, we become haunted by rasa. We become haunted by the taste we remember, that taste that we got by serving the Lord's lotus feet. And we see elsewhere, we see in one of the 11th canto verses, perhaps in the first part of the 11th canto, where King Nimi is receiving instructions from the 9 sagacious sons of King Rishabdev, the Navyogendras. And there's an assertion there that bhakti is certainly the most secure path. This is the real shelter of the living being, because there's no chance of our falling down, even if we run blindly with our eyes closed. I always want to say, even if we were running with scissors and our eyes closed or something like that, because it's a kind of a thing in America, this business of running with scissors. And then we see, then another example that we have is Gajendra. So those of us who've read the 8th canto of the Bhagavatam, we know Gajendra's story. He was formerly a great king known as Indradyumna. And in his previous life, he had done a lot of service, including memorizing wonderful prayer. And this prayer goes on, as we see it in the 8th canto, goes on for many, many shlokas. And so I just picked one of those shlokas that I think really expresses this dependence on the Lord, this confidence in the Lord as shelter. So Gajendra ended up taking birth as this Indradyumna ended up taking birth as, because of a mistake, took birth as an elephant. And he was the king of the elephants, so he had it pretty good for an elephant. But one day, while he was in the water, in the water frolicking with the lady elephants in his herd, he was attacked by an alligator. And we know the story that this is the alligator's natural habitat, the water. So he was very strong in the water, whereas Gajendra was a little weakened by being out of his natural element. And there's a long struggle, very long struggle. And eventually Gajendra surrenders to the Lord with this wonderful prayer. And among the many verses in this prayer that he remembered from his previous life, this is a really nice point to take away from the Gajendra Moksha Lila, the pastime of Krishna's Lord Narayan's delivering Gajendra, is that the bhakti that we engage in this lifetime will carry over into our next lifetime. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that there is no loss or diminution, that whatever bhakti we engage in, that's our permanent asset. So among these verses, Gajendra prays, since an animal such as me has surrendered unto you, who are supremely liberated, certainly you will release me from this dangerous position. Indeed, being extremely merciful, you incessantly try to deliver me. By your partial feature as Paramatma, you are situated in the hearts of all embodied beings. You are celebrated as direct transcendental knowledge, and you are unlimited. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So here, the surrender is expressed in this namaste at the end. In some of the verses, we see prapannam. But namaste, that's also surrender. We discussed that at the beginning of our exploration of Sharanagati, that there's a verse that explains the meaning of the word namaha. And it means not me. This is not about me, that my life is now yours. Na-ma, not me. So this is Gajendra's part of Gajendra's expression of having complete confidence in the Lord's ability to deliver him from any situation. And Srila Prabhupada explains only Krishna can deliver us from this material existence. Indeed, he's always trying to deliver us. Ishvara sarvabhutanam hrideshir janatishtati. He is within our hearts and is not at all inattentive. His only aim is to deliver us from material life. It's not that he becomes attentive to us only when we offer prayers to him. Even before we offer our prayers, he incessantly tries to deliver us. He is never lazy in regard to our deliverance. Therefore, this verse says, Bhuri Karunaya Namo Lalaya. Namo Layaya. It is the causeless mercy of the Supreme Lord that he always tries to bring us back home, back to Godhead. God is liberated and he tries to make us liberated. But although he's constantly trying, we refuse to accept his instructions. Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja. Nonetheless, he's not become angry. Therefore, he is described here as Bhuri Karunaya, unlimitedly merciful in delivering us from this material condition of life and taking us back home, back to Godhead. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur notes, from this verse till the end of the prayers, Bhagavan, who is known by devotees, is described. The word pasha, noose, here refers to the crocodile and to samsara. I offer respects to you who liberate surrendered animals like me from the noose of material existence. There's something here wrong here. And to you who were rejected till now by me, but you're not angry with me. Rather, you are very compassionate. Bhuri Karunaya, since you are not contaminated even a little like other beings in this world. Amalaya. Another version is Alayaya. This means unto the Lord whose mercy is never destroyed, or unto the Lord who does not sleep, who is not lazy. There's no need to make our suffering known to you, for you are residing within all beings as Antaryami. Seem to be some editing problems with this tika. You have said, Vishtabhaya midang kritsna mekang sena stito jagat. I'm situated in this universe by my expansion. You are perceived as the inner observer in all beings. Pratita Prayakrashe. I offer respects to Krishna. Brihate Bhagavate. Elsewhere in his Tika, um, Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur points out that we're all Bhagavan, we're all eternal beings. But Gajendra is referring in this verse to the Lord as Brihad Bhagavat, the great, the supreme personality of Godhead. Now we also see surrender in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, and I've picked a favorite, I was going to say a favorite part of the Madhya Lila and a favorite part of chapter 22 of the Madhya Lila. This chapter is part of the Sanatana Shiksha, Lord Chaitanya's instructions to Sanatana Goswami. And it's in this chapter that we see Lord Chaitanya discussing with Sanatana Goswami the 64 angas of sadhana bhakti. But before that, he discusses surrender in a number of ways. And this is very early in the chapter. Pardon me. This is very early in the chapter. And Lord Chaitanya says, Krishna tomarhana jadi bole ekabar, maya banda hoite Krishna tare kore par. One is immediately freed from the clutches of Maya if he seriously and sincerely says, my dear Lord Krishna, although I have forgotten you for so many long years in the material world, today I am surrendering unto you. I am your sincere and serious servant. Please engage me in your service. And then, as he does, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami follows that assertion of his own, of Lord Chaitanya's, with evidence from revealed scripture. And so this is a verse from the Ramayana. Sakradeva prapanno yastavasmiti chayachate abhayam sarvada tasmai dadamye tad pratam mama. So this is Lord Ramchandra addressing, I think it's Vibhishana, who has surrendered to him. Vibhishana is a brother of Ravana's, who is actually a devotee. And so he's switching sides here. He's going over to the light side from the dark side. And so he's a little worried because, he's been part of this effort, to keep Sita Devi away from Rama and to kill Rama, actually. And now he's surrendering to Lord Ramchandra. And Ram is, he seeks to reassure him that his attempt to take shelter of Lord Ram will not go in vain. So he says, it is my vow that if one only once seriously surrenders unto me, saying, my dear Lord, from this day I am yours, and prays to me for courage, I shall immediately award courage to that person, and he will always remain safe from that time on. Now, I first encountered this passage as it appears in the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. So this was back in the spring of 1970, shortly after I had decided to make Krishna consciousness my life. And so I was reading the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, and I came across this passage where Srila Prabhupada has Lord Chaitanya telling Sanatana Goswami that we can immediately be freed from Maya's clutches if just once we can seriously and sincerely say, my dear Lord Krishna, although I have forgotten you for so many long years in this material world, now I am surrendering to you. I am your sincere and serious servant. Please engage me in your service. And then he follows it up saying that Lord Rama says that it's his vow that if somebody just once seriously surrenders, saying, "My dear Lord, from this day I am yours," and prays to me for courage, I will immediately award courage to that person. So I remember reading this and I thought, oh my God, this is the key. This is the secret. If I can just say this once with seriously and sincerely, Krishna will accept me. So I determined from that day in the spring of 1970 that I was going to practice saying this until I was able to say it seriously and sincerely. And I'm still practicing 51 years later. This is part of my, when I rise, I have a number of prayers that I say to help me remember what my day is for, that it's really for the service of Krishna. And I always end up, and I've been doing this for 51 years, and I also say it at other times during the day. I end up the prayers with this by saying this in English. My dear Lord Krishna, although I have forgotten you for so many long years in this material world, now I am surrendering to you. I am your sincere and serious servant. Please engage me in your service. My dear Lord, from this day, I am yours. And every time I say it, I try to do it not in a rote or mechanical way. I try to actually do it from my heart, even though I've just awakened. This is I really want to start my day with this determination that I belong to Krishna. And I remember that when I taught at a Gurukula in California at the Bhaktivedanta village up in the Sequoia foothills of the Sierra Mountains, Sierra Nevada mountains, that actually they trained the children, the Gurukula students, to say this every morning just after Mangalarti before they sat down for their, or as they sat down for their japa period. So this is one of my favorite parts. And then, although I neglected to do so the last couple of weeks, I wanted to end with a song. And I so wanted to find a kirtan where Agnidev is, because this is Agnidev's habit. If he has a 1 hour or 2 hour shift at a kirtan festival, then he usually will chant a particular tune for maybe 17, 18, maybe 20 minutes at most, and then switch to another tune. But he also likes to punctuate his kirtan with some bhajan, which gives him an opportunity to give a little mini class because he wants to explain the bhajan. And so this is one of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So I wanted to find a kirtan where Agnidev stopped to sing this bhajan, Atma Samarpane Gela Abhiman, because this is an expression of that confidence in Krishna's shelter. Krishna will always protect us in all circumstances. And we sing this. This is on his album, A Prayer to the Lotus Feet of Krishna. But we found out that CD Baby gets a little, their algorithm notices that, if I were to use one of their YouTube videos, it's not even really a video, it's just a picture of the cover of the album with the recording. So apparently they claim some rights to that. And although I think we could probably get away with it by claiming fair use or something like that, it's not worth the trouble. We don't want our videos taken down from our YouTube channel. So I was looking for, I spent a couple of hours yesterday evening looking for a kirtan where he was singing this, and I couldn't find it. Of course, no loss. I got to listen to a lot of wonderful Agnidev kirtan along the way. This is such a wonderful song of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's, and I think a lot of the devotees in Sakya Rasa really like it because there's some really wonderful pictures painted along the way. Bhaktivinoda sings Atma Samarpana Gela Abhiman Nahi Korobun Nija Rakabidan. Surrendering to you lifted me from the burden of false pride. No longer will I try to secure my own well-being. Tua dhana jani tuhun rako binat, palya godhana jnana koti tu asat. Oh Lord, I'm confident of your protection. For like one of your cows or calves, I am your treasured property. Chao bimadhava jamuna tire bangshi bhajao to dakobi dhire. O Madhava, I see you leading your herds to pasture on the banks of the Jamuna. You call to them by gently playing your flute. Aghabaka marato rakabidhan, korobi sadatahung gokulakan. By slaying giant demons such as Agha and Baka, you will always provide full protection, O Gokulakan. Raka karobi tuhum nishchoy jani, pana karobun hama jamuna pani. Fearless and confident of your protection, I will drink the water of the Jamuna. Kaliya dokakoro vinash, shodhobi nadi jala baraobiash. The Kaliya serpent's venom poisoned the Jamuna's water, yet that poison will not act. You will purify the Jamuna, and by such heroic deeds enhance our fate. Piyatodava nalarako bhimoy, Gopala Govinda namatabahoy. You who are called Govinda and Gopal will certainly protect me by swallowing the forest fire. Surapati durmati nasabichari rakobi vashana giri varadhari. When Indra, the king of the gods, sends torrents of rains, you will counteract his malice and protect us by lifting the mighty Govardhan hill. Chaturana karobo jabko chaturana nakarobo jabko chori raka korobi mujhe gokulahari. When the four-headed Brahma steals your cowherd boyfriends and calves, then too you will surely protect me, O Gokula Hari. Bhakati vino da tua Gokuladhan, Rakobi Keshava Koroto Jatan. Bhakti Vinod is now the property of Gokula, your holy abode, O Keshava. Kindly protect him with care. So the devotee, a lot of the devotees I know, when we hear this song, there's this from this one verse, Aghabaka Marato Rakavidhan, Korobi Sadatuhum Gokulakan. By slaying demons such as Agha and Baka, you will always provide full protection. So we know how fearlessly the cowherd boys marched into the mouth of Aghasura when he presented himself. They got all curious and said, wow, look at this cool cave. We never noticed this one here before. And somebody else says, oh man, nasty smell, like rotten fish. Oh God, maybe it's like a big snake. And they're going back and forth, snake cave. And then they just said, whatever. If it's a big old snake and he wants to swallow us, Krishna's here. He's got us covered. So this is a song the devotees like. And Agni Dev Prabhu has come up with a really wonderful tune for singing this song, and the devotees love to hear it. I am out of time, but if there are any quick questions or comments, maybe we can take a minute or two to entertain them. Anyone?
Dandawas Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I want to ask, there are many nice examples of surrendering into Krishna, but you mentioned that verse at the start from Chandogya Upanishad, the Shamat Shamalam Prapadye, Shamalat Shamam Prapadyante. So how about examples of surrendering into the energy?
Oh, well, of course, in Brajadham, everyone takes shelter of Krishna's internal potency. Of course, many are actually constituted of Krishna's internal potency. But even those who are jivas, those who are sadhana siddhas, or like the Munichari gopis, or everybody there, or even the devas who come. They have all taken shelter of Krishna's internal potency, and everyone there is there to serve the pastimes of Radha and Krishna. So that verse, this is a verse that Srila Prabhupada cited in, I think, in his Vyasa Puja offering in 1936 in Bombay, and that this is our real business, is always taking shelter of Radha and Krishna. So in order to achieve her shelter, we take shelter of Krishna, and back and forth. So she's very, very eager to hear us chant Krishna's name, and he's very eager to hear us chant Radha Rani's name. We were discussing last night, one of the Angas of Bhakti we discussed last night was observing the Kartik Vrat. And as we know, this is Radha Rani's month. And so in order to propitiate her, we engage, there are different things that the different devotees will do. They'll go and spend the month in Vrindavan, physically taking shelter of the Dham, and add extra service, maybe extra japa to their practice, or extra mantras for their mantra dhyan, or maybe a meditation, as some of us have heard, on the Maha Mantra that is meant to put us very clearly under Srimati Radharani's shelter. So, and another point that we read, perhaps in one of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's tikas on one of those, is that, it was on the anga of serving the devotees. I think it might be Jiva Goswami who says that applying any of these angas of bhakti that are discussed in the second chapter of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu to Krishna's devotees, that is also bhakti. So it's quite a wonderful thing. We're not in this alone. We have lots of company, and what wonderful company it is, as we see with you devotees here this morning. I hope that helps. Is there anything else?
Thank you very much.
No, thank you. Okay, I guess this is an opportunity for us to adjourn. So thank you all again for your company and for your patience and attention, and the blessings by which I seemed, at least so far, not to have really completely messed this up technically. And we'll see you back here again next week to discuss more of Sharanagati.
Sripad Bhakti by Ashram Maharaj ki Jai.
Okay, I don't know how I unshare.